Hi, I'm Jas,
And I'm Rich.
and welcome to our podcast where we're talking about all things software engineering. We've been friends since we did computer science together at university and been programming professionally for a decade. What we've done is record 3 episodes covering a range of topics to start us off. What makes a good programming interview, JavaScript, and IDEs, and then we're going to release them to the internet and see where we go from there. Today's episode is all about IDEs.
IDEs.
IDEs. What would you like to say, Richard, about IDEs?
I was gonna ask you what you use.
Oh, what I use?
Yeah. This is about you.
Okay. Well, people, I think there's a bit of a shock here because I know you know what I'm going to say.
I know what's coming.
So I, on a day-to-day basis, use Vim to do my development.
Crazy.
Um,
How many say you use Vim in a terminal?
yeah. So I have PuTTY, SSH into our development server, and I use Vim on there. Now,
All of this on Windows.
yeah. So just a proviso that the language, I'm not writing Java in Vim or something like that because that would be, I'm not that crazy.
But the shortcuts are so good.
I'm not that crazy. I use, because I'm doing KDB, which is like an interpreted language. It's like an IDE doesn't give you that much benefit. There also isn't one written
Because it's niche.
because it's so niche. 100, 200 users maximum globally. There isn't anything better. So you either do what some people do, which is hack around existing IDEs. So there's some people who've used like Eclipse and then written a syntax highlighter and a autocomplete thing.
Yeah.
But it's just some guy who's sort of one guy's written it and vaguely passes it around.
Yeah.
Or there is a few more options now, but yeah, Vim for me works. The reason is because there's no compilation, right? So I change a file, I can just run it immediately because you're just loading that file or some files in. There's no compilation stage to then be like, okay, I've got a tar and now I can SCP it to a server.
Right.
You've got, say, 20 files and they're all there and you need all of them. So either you've got to be like, okay, I'm modifying, x.q. Okay, let me go and find that in the tree, SCP that over to the right place in the tree, and then now I can run it. Or you can just edit locally. That's my feeling.
So you're just editing them in place.
Yeah.
How do you... what if you need to edit lots of files? How does that... Or is there a way that Vim does that?
So Vim does you can split the view into sub windows, but with Windows 10, you've got the snapping, so I just have multiple PuTTY sessions basically. And one PuTTY session is one Vim window basically.
Yeah. I was just thinking we should probably explain what Vim is in case someone doesn't know.
Yeah,
that's
true.
I will have a bash.
Go.
As a Vim expert or not. I was thinking about Vim this morning and I was thinking that I'm not a very good drawer and my drawings now look the same as when I was about 7, and I feel the same with Vim. Like we got to a proficiency level when we were at uni and now I'm no better. I can open files, I can make edits. I can't really navigate around the files properly and I can save them.
Can you copy paste?
I used to be able to. I know it's Shift V. Is that right? Shift V?
Shift V for
paste. I don't know.
Yeah, Shift V for the line and then P.
I'm out. I'm out.
Shift V yank, paste.
Yank, yeah, brilliant.
Why?
So, so it's a command line. It's a purely command line editor. Well, the other ones, Emacs is probably the
Nano
next,
is a default one in Ubuntu.
Yeah, and Emacs is probably the only other one that has a cult following, which Vim definitely has.
And there's definitely a Vim versus Emacs thing. So there's a guy at work that uses Emacs just 100% of the time, even to browse the file system and stuff. And he does.
He uses his browser. I work with a guy that used Emacs like that, and
I don't get it, but
no, but I don't. To be fair, I don't get either. So I do use Vim to quickly edit files like in Mac OS, just to make one-line edits. But I don't use it to work on proper projects.
Yeah.
I'll use it if I'm in a bind. And it's my one of choice because I know how to open files, save them, and edit things just.
Yeah.
So what else? So you have one terminal per file.
Yeah.
So that means. So if you're like, oh, where's that file? You need to quit out or open a new terminal and then find it.
Yeah. So I should also say that the default Vim, the way you're using it, isn't the way mine looks.
Oh, you've changed it.
Yeah. So Vim is massively customizable, and I just stole a load of config from loads of different people to get it to the way I look. So I have line numbers. I have the current line that I'm on highlighted differently.
Mm-hmm.
I have undo that lasts. So normally if you do undo in Vim, you close it, you open it again, it won't.
It's persistent.
So with persistent Vim, persistent undo I have.
Okay.
So you can undo back to 6 months ago because it's all in a file next to the file.
Oh, like a history file.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's
That's
that,
cool.
and I've got like some other shortcuts. So like remembers where you are. So every time you close and open the file, it opens the file back exactly where you closed it.
The cursor.
Yeah.
Ah.
So those are the things but they're things that you find over time. You don't realize they exist, and then every now and again on Hacker News or something, someone's like, "Here's my Vim shortcuts."
So
now I have a GitHub repository that has my Vim settings.
what percentage of your time do you spend doing KDB at work? Quite high? Or
Yeah. Of the things that I do that are development, I would say 90-95%. I have done some Java stuff for which I use Eclipse, which I know is also not a fan of your fan of.
Boo. Eclipse is okay.
But yeah,
So you're Java and KDB, Eclipse for Java.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things I realized when I was thinking about this topic is it depends what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Like you said, dynamically compiled, I use Sublime for.
Yeah.
And but I'm the same as you. Like there's not. Do you get syntax highlighting for Vim?
Yeah, so fortunately, the guys that wrote KDB wrote Vim syntax highlight file.
Right, so it's pretty good.
But by default, again, you don't get that. So you have to have that as part of it, and then you do get it. So, and Vim by default gives you autocomplete for any file in the same file. So if you're in a file and you have a word and then you use it again later, there's a shortcut and it will just circle through all the words in that file that might match it.
Yeah, I think Sublime has the same kind of, yeah.
So for KDB that works because it works well enough. Obviously, if you want to go cross file, then you're not going to get that.
So if you were using I think the main thing for you is that basically KDB is a super niche thing that we should probably also clarify. So I'll explain it.
Go for it again.
Badly.
Yep.
Jas is the expert, not me, but it's a special type of database which is good for time series data.
Yeah.
Like kind of fair. And can it run on Windows? No.
Yes, it can.
It can, but basically you're always running it on a Linux box, a server, basically, somewhere else.
Yeah, so big data, we collectively don't like that word, but that term, but yeah, it's massive amounts of data capture and then analytics on the top of that. So,
right.
Our production server at work has a terabyte of RAM, for example.
That's madness.
Yeah, and 90 terabytes of disk. So, to run things locally, you'd either have to have a server a local PC that had 64, 128 gigabytes of RAM, or you just buy a server.
You're just not worth even turning up if you don't have.
Well, you can obviously you just can't capture as much. I mean, they're 64-bit, so you've got the question of how much do you want to capture?
Do you mirror like dev to prod? Is dev to prod mirrored? Like
no. So our dev server only has 128 gig of RAM.
Right.
I say old,
but still feel the need. Yeah, that's interesting.
But and again, we'll talk about KDB separately, but there are lots of other reasons why you have to do it. You're limited as to where you can do it because of the licensing.
Yeah.
But I guess that's a topic for a different time.
Yeah.
Where there are odd things about that.
So the next obvious question is, if you were developing some code, let's say you were doing a quick script in Python, which is also interpreted on your machine, what would you use then?
I would probably still use Vim. I actually edited a Python script earlier today for something else, for some Ansible stuff that we do.
In Vim.
And I did it in Vim just because it was there. And the changes I was making weren't that complicated.
Yeah.
I was literally just adding a parameter into something that didn't exist. Cool. I do a lot of Bash because a lot of the scaffolding around KDB, you use Bash, or you have to use something else. So I use Bash.
KDB, it's not really
so I do a lot of that, and again, I do that in Vim. I think Python for me is on the boundary there. I think I would, if I was going to do something serious in Python, I would treat it more like Java. As in, I'd probably take it off the development server and do it locally.
Yeah.
I think just because there's a lot of benefits there in IDEs. There's obviously a lot of people using it. It's the same as JavaScript. I don't think I'd do JavaScript in Vim unless I'm doing something super basic, like a really basic sort of relatively static web page.
Yeah,
which I have been doing a little bit of. But again, all of those things that aren't KDB, except for Java, I'm doing one file tasks. They're not going to be big projects.
Cool. So I should probably say what I use, which is much more glamorous.
It is, but it's another source of frustration, I think.
So I use Sublime almost exclusively since about 2000 and, well, maybe we should say years. 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah,
quite a while. And I use terminals, so like you, but locally. So I develop on Mac, which is the difference, for a couple of reasons, but primarily because I like having a good local Linux or Unix, I suppose, terminal.
Yeah.
And Mac is a way of getting that. And then I also do apps, so like iOS apps. So I basically need a Mac.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I use Hyper for my terminal. So one of the things I realized when I was thinking about what I use, there's definitely a vanity aspect that I realized Sublime, I think, looks badass. And the terminal I use, I'm pretty sure I picked because it just looks awesome.
What's it called?
It's called Hyper.
Hyper?
It's made by this group of, I was about to say vigilante developers, but there's this company called Zeit, Zeit.
Right.
And these are some of those people on the internet that I love to hate, where there's like 7 of them and they do more work than like I could do in like a decade in like a year. They're those kind, and they've made this thing called Now. They've made a thing called Next.js, which is pretty much the premier server-side React rendering thing, which is like quite impressive just to have those two. Then they've made a terminal, and they've made, and those aren't the only things they've made. They've got like 4 or 5, maybe 6 big open source projects, and there's only 7 of them. But they've made this terminal, and they've made the terminal basically with a UX and design person, I assume, because they use it mainly on Twitter to do not screen grabs, but I don't know what they do, but they make videos of them. Their primary product is a CLI thing, and so they basically have built Hyper to make using their CLI thing look sick. So it's just like we'll grab a picture of it in a minute. Maybe we should grab a picture now. There you go. So that's what it looks like.
Oh, I think I have seen.
You've seen it around.
Yeah.
You maybe giving it a little look over your shoulder.
Is it written in Electron?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember because it's really super customizable or something.
I think it's rendered in HTML and CSS.
Yeah.
I'm not actually going to stand behind this choice firmly.
Thank God.
Because it's performance-wise, yeah, maybe not the best, but it is good. But Sublime I stand by. Sublime is...
So I would ask there then, Slime versus Atom. Do you have an opinion, or have you used Atom? Or?
A bit, and VS Code is the other one.
Well, yeah.
So the features I think they all have in common, which actually Vim has as well, is that I think, although you will know better than me, is that they all basically have a human/programmer readable config, which when you think about something like Eclipse or IntelliJ, they don't really have that. They must have some settings files somewhere that you just never see.
Yep.
So like Sublime has like a JSON file. I think Atom does as well.
Visual Studio does as well.
Visual Studio does. This seems to be like a thing. I don't know who invented it, but like it's become popular, and I think it's a very good thing because like having your config for your IDE in a thing you can read and edit is for programmers. It's great,
and you can commit it as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, per project.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sublime supports that, but possibly.
Oh, but I mean as well. Something I mentioned earlier. My Vim settings are in a GitHub repo that if I need to get on a new machine, I just clone it, and then it just put all the doc files in the right place.
That is good. Yeah,
I guess you can do the same.
Yeah, we were just talking beforehand about there's a thing called Mackup that I use, and that backs up my Sublime settings and puts them in Dropbox, and then we'll sync them back down.
Yeah.
And so like it remembers like how many tab spaces I have, and very important other things like this. But Sublime, so I think Atom is good. I think it's lost. I realised today, Atom presumably is now also owned by Microsoft because they acquired GitHub, didn't they?
Is it a GitHub thing?
I think it was a GitHub thing. I'm pretty sure. Let's look that up because I think it is. Yeah, it is. So they now own both. So they now own
that's weird.
2 of the top 3. Yeah, it's something that I didn't even think about when they acquired. But I think I hear a lot of good things about VS Code. especially for TypeScript, but possibly for some other things. One of the guys I work with was using it recently, and he's used Sublime for a couple of years, and he was like, "Yeah, it's really good." And another one of our friends uses it.
I've seen somebody at work who does a lot of web stuff use it with the debugger connected to Chrome.
Yeah, so Sublime doesn't. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, so you start Node and then attach VS Code to it, so you can step and add breakpoints just in your editor. So it basically works like Eclipse.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because Sublime definitely. So that's the downside to Sublime, is basically it is just for editing text files, and I think you can get some. To be honest, I don't really think you get any plugins for like debugging, or you're basically on your own. So that's why the other terminals are there, really, for just sort of other bits. Because I think that's the main sort of thing that maybe VS Code's a little different on, is integrated versus. So like Sublime and Vim are not really what I'd call, like, I don't know what the word is, but like IntelliJ and Eclipse are very, like, you have like the play button and you can step over and set breakpoints, and then like Sublime and Vim.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're thinking about it the way we're talking about it here, Vim and Sublime probably aren't actually IDEs, right? They're not interactive development environments. They're actually just text editors that people hack around to get looking like an IDE, but then you have to switch into something else to actually look at the output. Whereas I guess VS Code seems to be trying to bridge that gap, right?
Yeah. It feels like it's in the middle, because I can definitely see how it's closer to something like IntelliJ or original Visual Studio. I guess that's the other big boy in this. For all its sins, I haven't used it in a while, actually. It was better last I used it.
I guess if you're doing C#, is that still your only choice, Visual Studio?
More or less. Does it run on Linux though for the .NET Core? I do not know.
I don't think it does. I know you can do cross-compile. So you can run Visual Studio in Windows and connect it to Bash on Windows and a remote server to then deploy, cross-compile and deploy it.
Gosh.
So you can run .NET Core on Linux, but I don't think you can say I've got a Linux development environment and I want to run Visual Studio. A lot of the guys, so our company does a lot of C++, and they all use JetBrains' C-Line.
I've never actually seen. I've obviously
which is so it's basically, apparently it's the one to use for C++.
Really?
Because it's, I think for the same reason that a lot of people like IntelliJ, it just does a lot of things really well.
Yeah.
But I mean, at our work, it'd be interesting to see how other people. I don't know a lot of people who do C++, but they've got some weird setup. So they run C-Line on the development server, Linux development server, and then use X Windows to run C-Line on their desktop. So they're not running C-Line natively on their local PC.
Yeah, okay. I don't.
But that seems like, I mean, to me, that seems all manner of wrong.
Yeah, that's a bit mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, we should. I'd forgotten about Visual Studio entirely. It's thrown me because with Sublime and Atom. Going back to what you asked, I think Atom had a lot of problems. I've read from other people saying that it can be a bit slow. Like it's not particularly responsive. And the thing where Sublime is really good. I think it's written in like quite a low level language. I think it might be written. I don't know. I think C++ or something. But it is rapid, and it never falters. It's just constantly just does what you want all the time, and it very rarely slows down. And even when you're doing quite complicated things. And the feature I use a lot is you can open an entire folder with it. So you can open and you have that sidebar, and you can actually, what I'll often do is I'll check out. If I'm working on like 4 Git repos that will go together, I'll check them all out in one big folder, and then I'll open the whole folder, and then I'll have all 4 projects in the left-hand side. And then if a project's in the left-hand side, there's a shortcut to search by name to any file in any of those folders.
Yeah.
So if you've got like hello.js, you can just press the like Control P and then start typing hello. And then it will find all the matches, and you can search for strings across all those things, and that's like ridiculously good.
I feel like Visual Studio must have taken that from Sublime.
Yeah,
because that definitely has that open project.
Yeah,
which is basically open folder.
Yeah, it's just a folder, and there's nothing special about it, and it's just a text editor. It never saves any like IntelliJ
indexing.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. We could get onto the joys of IntelliJ indexing in a minute, but yeah, like Sublime. It's just very quick, and I don't really think about it. It has plugins, which I think Atom and VS Code, they all now have pretty solid plugin support. So you get all the syntax highlighting that you would probably want, and a few other things. So it's solid text editor, but I don't think I would use it for compiled languages, because of that would be madness. But I use it for Python and JavaScript, and remote I would probably use Vim and just struggle, but I don't know. Yeah. Thankfully I don't do much of that. Yeah.
But then so if you're then looking at compiled, then we'd assume Java for that, you'd be an IntelliJ man.
Yeah, I am. We both started in Eclipse a long time ago now.
Yeah.
We can leave it vague by saying when Java 6 was around, which was like nearly a decade. But
was it Java 6 back then? Wow.
Yeah, we started learning on Java 6, and I think I finished my Java career and it was still Java 6.
And now we're on Java 10.
I'd graduated university and got like 3 or 4 years of work experience, and it was still just on the same version from the day we started. It did just come out just before. I think Java 5 to 6 was just before we started uni. But yeah, we used to use Eclipse, which is quite good. I think it suffers a little bit. Like, I like open source software a lot and almost all the development I do, but I notice that with UI open source software, like LibreOffice or whatever it's called now, OpenOffice, Eclipse is definitely in the same. We were talking about Audacity earlier on. They are all kind of just like, you look at them and you're like, ooh, that's a bit... And Eclipse is definitely in that camp for me, where does it look any different from back in the day?
No, it's exactly the same.
Exactly, of course. But IntelliJ is like, it's not free.
Yeah. They have a community version, though.
Oh, they do, yeah. They do. And it's not bad, actually. If you were just building some stuff for fun, it would be fine.
Yeah.
If you're like hardcore Java developer...
You're going to need to pay for it.
Yeah. And then there's like different versions. Man, it's confused. There's like the Python one and the Ruby one.
And the JS one as well.
Yeah, which some people... Was it WebStorm?
Yeah.
Some people like... I think the value of IntelliJ is much lower for non-compiled languages in my experience. I've tried RubyMine and PyCharm, I think it's called, back in the day. And it indexes all your files. So, which you
really likes indexing.
It does. So you load up your project and then it indexes for like 10 minutes. Like,
but so I when I was doing a lot of Java recently, just for one little project I had to do to bridge between KDB and some other messaging format that it didn't support, I wrote it in Java because I'm most comfortable in it. And I got to the end of doing it, and I was like, oh, Eclipse. I really should try IntelliJ, because I know you used to go on about it a lot. And I think the problem I have with it is I know how to get around Eclipse. Yeah. And I haven't had that time to be like, I need to switch, or there's not something that Eclipse doesn't do.
Yeah, there's not.
That I'm like, I need to switch to IntelliJ. So when I switch, I'm going, well, this shortcut, refactor is Control-Shift-R in Eclipse. Oh, what is it in IntelliJ? I don't know what it is.
It'll be like I think it's Shift F6. I think off the top of my head, maybe.
So you can switch IntelliJ to use the Eclipse key bindings, but then it's then a bit iffy, because then it doesn't...
Yeah. You're not using it, and it's... Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So then it's like, I get there and I'm like, oh, this would be really, really good. And then actually...
Yeah.
No, I'll just stick with Eclipse.
There's definitely a barrier to entry to changing. I think the thing that... So IntelliJ takes a lot longer to start an index. And then once it's indexed, it's very quick. But indexing... I've worked on some like really big enterprise Java stuff. And like an index could be like... I know some of the teams that used to sit near me, an IntelliJ index would take like 20 minutes.
Is that every time it starts up?
It's every time that the index somehow gets like invalidated. So
vague.
That's vague. But if you shut it down cleanly on a Friday and come back on Monday, I don't think there's a significant index.
Right.
But if it maybe crashes, or if something goes wrong, or there's a button you can press to nuke the index. I mean, to be fair, on a smaller project, and maybe they've made it a lot better. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago, but it was, it wasn't necessarily always a fun, like, sometimes we had to configure the JVM options for the bloody thing to like
the INI file.
Yeah, there's like there's that stupid INI file, and you're like, oh, I need more RAM for my IDE, and you're like, man, you spend longer. I don't miss working with it. It does have some of the refactors it has are amazing, but in general, and like I do miss that sometimes. Like working.
I think Eclipse has the same problem. I mean, particularly around the INI stuff, because they're both written in Java, right? So they have the inherent issues you have with Java.
Yeah.
which again I think is a discussion for a different day.
Yeah.
But XMX and XMS as command line flags, right, are just a pain in the backside. Well, I would say the one thing I've seen in IntelliJ that Eclipse definitely can't do is the decompilation of the class files.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't have the source for a class file,
Yeah.
if you open that file in IntelliJ, it gives you something that's actually readable.
Yeah.
Whereas in Eclipse, it goes, this is a source, this is a class file. Here's some basic. It just gives you the compiled source. It doesn't even try to get you back to the original Java. Whereas IntelliJ, I've seen it, and I've seen somebody else open a file and I've been like, there's no comments in this file. Because I'm looking at it over his shoulder and it actually looks like
proper
code that's been written.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how the hell has somebody written this open source project with no comments at all?
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it's actually a .class, that it's decompiled, which I think is impressive. I don't know how they've done that, but it is impressive.
The JetBrains guys are on it, and they obviously care about developers. Like they built Resharper, which is was an add-on to Visual Studio back in the day that basically gave it a lot of the IntelliJ features in Visual Studio. And I can remember working with a few people that didn't have Resharper when we were working on C# code, and I was just like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
It gives you it's features now that just being able to find a class by name, really basic things like renaming a variable everywhere, renaming a class everywhere.
So Visual Studio couldn't do that out of the box?
It didn't used to be able to. I don't know.
I'm sure you'd hope it can now, but maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, this wasn't that long ago. I can't remember the numbers for Visual Studio, but 2010 I don't think did. Maybe I used 13 once. I don't know. I don't know. But then with VS Code, they've been pretty good. So, yeah, I don't... Are there any other IDEs we've missed?
I get on the C++ side, I would say yes, but I don't really care about C++.
You may come to find this out about us, but we're not. Neither of us have much experience with it.
No, I have it just sort of by osmosis at my current place where everything is C++. But
the bloke that sits opposite me uses it, and he feels like a rocket scientist to me most days.
Yeah.
He builds software that tunes engines for not Formula 1 cars, but those cars, proper race cars. Yeah, and I'm like,
and he's doing it in C++.
Yeah, and I'm just sat there writing React apps to an item's gone in the basket and other random crap. But
I think the main one I've seen it there actually is the KDE develop, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. So that KDE development environment is desktop environment is massive and also happens to have its own IDE.
It's mad. But it's quite big.
That's one of the big C++ buffs in my current place. Always went on about KDevelop, but I think there always will be other ones.
So I think looking across all of them. So for me, I wouldn't use a proper IDE, an integrated whatever for non-static. So JavaScript. Although the current debugging in JavaScript's a pain, actually.
So that's what's interesting about that, right? And I like I mentioned before, this guy at work who uses Visual Studio Code, it does seem like a nice hybrid where you've got something that looks like Sublime. I think it does, but then you can hook it up properly to your actual Chrome, not like an internal Chrome inside VS Chrome. It's like your actual Chrome window.
But then you don't... See, that's weird. So what I normally do is I will hook it up to my Chrome, and Chrome is my debugger. So really, in terms of my IDE, arguably actually for JavaScript, Chrome is sort of in there because I can inspect the source and set the breakpoints there.
But how do you get around the compiledness of most of your JavaScript output? Because surely then you're not debugging the actual code you've written.
With great difficulty. So... Yeah, when before in my company, we trained a bunch of people, and when we learned to program, I think you and I are big fans of. We used to just play programs and just debug them through over and over again. And for me, that was actually kind of how I learned a lot of things. Was just I'm going to sort of write a program that's kind of maybe what I think is sort of right, and then I'm going to put some breakpoints in it and actually
So you're talking about the Java debugger, right?
Yeah. So this would have been in Eclipse.
Is...
Yeah, and the debugger in Eclipse and IntelliJ is both. It's native and brilliant, which in JavaScript and Chrome, especially if you're debugging node code, so server-side JavaScript, then you're in Chrome, so it's it's kind of not really running in Chrome, but you're like borrowing the debugger, and that's weird. But yeah, like you say, so with JavaScript, you compile all your code. And what I noticed with the people that we were teaching was I would really encourage them to use it, but because they couldn't trust it, they wouldn't use it. So they'd have a problem, and you'd be like, have you opened the debugger? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, no. Whereas like you and I would be like, that's the
straight in there.
Straight first thing you would do. The one way around it is, which is not a good way, is you can actually physically add a debugger statement in the code, and then it won't mess up. But that's not great.
Sorry, how do you mean?
So you can literally put the word debugger semicolon,
right,
and then when the program runs, the Chrome will just like stop there.
Oh, okay.
And so
it's a breakpoint that you've written
in the code. Yeah, a few languages have that. Yeah, I don't think Java does.
No.
Python, I don't know how many have that. But so you can do that, and then it's on that line. That's like the only thing you do know.
And then you've got like relative.
Yeah. So you press step over, now you don't really know what line it's on anymore, because like you say, it's running one set of code, like the code that Chrome understands. The only thing is now is that Chrome nearly supports everything.
Yeah.
So there's one big feature it doesn't support in JavaScript, which is importing and exporting of modules, which is quite a big one, to be honest, because it means all the variable names have changed. So basically debugging is a complete pain in the butt. But other than that, yeah, it's not a very good experience. I'm trying to find some redeeming.
And this is something you do every day.
Yeah, so I basically don't debug code as much as I would probably otherwise.
So I guess to say there though, for us, I don't know whether you'd agree, but for me, I mean, the Java debugger is the gold standard. I've never seen a debugger that's been better.
C# Visual Studio's debugger is pretty good.
Right.
I would say, yeah. But yeah, they're both... I have not seen any that are as good as those two.
And I guess if tomorrow there was like, here's this debugger for JavaScript that is basically the Java one, you'd be all over it.
Yeah, it's just trust. Yeah. I don't trust the Chrome one.
Because it changes, I guess.
Yeah. And sometimes there have been, I don't know if I'm just saying there's bugs with it's maybe a bit harsh. There have been things that they've changed. I mean, in general, Chrome's pretty good. Well, except for the memory usage, it's pretty good. That is one of my big bugbears, because when we were talking about my terminal I use, which is built with Electron, so it has a whole Chrome for my Chromium, I think technically, for my terminal. So that means my terminal will use like 1.2 gigs of RAM.
Brilliant.
on my Mac, which only has 16 gig of RAM, and Chrome's like using 8 between.
Well, if you use VS Code or someone like that, you'd have Chrome, VS Code Electron, Hyper Electron, Slack Electron, and then you see all these memes about memory usage, and Mac particularly seems to struggle.
It does struggle. Yeah, today, it's not a brilliant world you live in, really. I think at the moment, I don't know what it's like on Windows. It doesn't seem as bad on Windows actually, but on Mac it's not good.
I think it's interesting that you're not happy with the way you have to debug your code, despite the fact you're doing it 100% of the time. So I assume you look
just for 4 years.
Yeah. so I assume you're looking for. You keep an eye on if anything new comes up in this space. It just doesn't seem to be.
Do you know what's been really rubbish is debugging Node code is like, they didn't even add flags into Node to let you really break into a debugger properly. Like the support was ropey until...
This is server-side JavaScript.
Yeah. It was ropey until quite recently. And the thing that's really holding JavaScript back to them, we can talk about this more later, is import-export support. I've been waiting on it for like 2 years, and I don't know. I'm still not sure when it's coming. I think it's about another year, like native support for it. Wow. But it's a really, like, if you go on GitHub and you're using a library, there's like a 90% chance they'll use the syntax, but it's not natively supported anywhere.
So you have to transcode.
So yeah, in a browser, definitely. In Node, there's an experimental flag, which I am using on a couple of projects, and it is bliss because you're no longer compiling your code, but which is a ridiculous thing to say, but I guess that's the price of like rapid evolution of a language like they've done. And the language now is like really good, gets a hard rap, but it's just, but you're not going to use that flag in production for like a customer. They're like, why did it break? You're like, I used a flag which was like -- experimental -- modules. It's like,
and it's crashed with
like, why is it broken? Like, is it long-term support? Let's call up the Node guys and they'll tell us to sod off. But it's just kind of like,
why does it say beta in the release version?
yeah, exactly. And it's like, yeah, so but yeah, that is kind of rubbish. I think WebSwarm's supposed to have pretty good support for node debugging, but the thing is, ultimately what I'm looking for, I guess it comes down to, we should probably talk about what we actually think makes a good IDE/development environment. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
I think, I mean, I suppose I don't deal with compiled languages very often.
Yeah.
So what I want from a development environment is an easy way to edit files and an easy way to get those files to where I need to run them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're my primary drivers, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty clear from when you asked me earlier.
Yeah.
Now, I think that isn't what everybody wants. And I think, personally, being able to edit files locally on my PC would always be the preference. Because, even though I was saying how I modify Vim to look more like an IDE at the end of the day, things like copying and pasting out of that session into another one, which you didn't ask me about, and I didn't mention.
How's that work for you?
Is not excellent. Yeah. So, I mean, just to actually answer that question, I'm sure it's entertaining. So if I have code that, if I've split my screen into two, say, and I've got a putty on the left, putty on the right, two windows,
yeah,
and I need to copy something from one to the other, it's fine if none of those lines wrap over. So you've got like word wrap.
Yeah.
So it's actually technically the same line, but you've got it onto another line. Mm-hmm. If that's the case,
when you paste it, the new line comes with it. Even though you shouldn't.
So normally, then otherwise you can select it over. You have to put Vim into a special mode to paste.
Right.
Important point. Because default, it'll just add loads of tabs everywhere for no. I still don't understand why. So you enable paste mode and then you just paste it in with putty, which is like shift insert or something. If the lines wrap, what I then have to do is close the file in the other session, open it into my current one, and then use Vim's sort of paging to copy and paste with Vim's native tools in the same window.
Yeah.
So there's a shortcut. If you open multiple files and you go, crap, I've opened two files. If you do divide two files, there's one sort of there, and then there's one, you have to think of it like behind it. So there's these shortcuts called :BP and :BN, which I think the B stands for buffer, and it basically cycles around them.
Oh,
so you can copy between them that way.
And then
save it, close it, and then open it again.
And then I assume you just slide your desk drawer open, take out the loaded revolver, and just shoot yourself through the chin. It's just put the gun in your mouth, and then think, no, I'll just put that back. Just because that sounds, just as you were describing that, I was just thinking, there's a lot of just wasted life in what you just said. That is, yeah. I guess it's just a trade-off, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's what when I started my answer just before. For me, that it's worth me doing that for the other benefits.
Yes.
But explaining them to like a normal to somebody like yourself, you're like, what the absolute fudge? Yes. And rightly so, I think. Which is again,
that's mad. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense in that case, but
yeah, I've got like Apple C, Apple V, 100. Works 100% of the time, every time.
Oh yeah, obviously, and Control C and Control V don't work in Vim either.
I suppose you could remap, but you're too far in now. You're too far in. You can't remap. But so yeah, what is there anything else that you're llooking for, or so
that's on that side of things, right? In terms of compiled languages, so Java, C#, C++ to some degree. I want a fully fledged IDE.
You can get some massive benefits from
like,
I want to rename this everywhere, and it can get it right every time.
Yeah,
which is like,
with Java and Eclipse, it's a joke that I don't know. I've said before, I don't know whose joke it is, but a lot of the time you can write Java just by mashing control space.
Yeah, you can.
The intelligent, the automatic completion.
It's wicked.
You're going to get if you think of a .java that you write, how much is auto completed? I mean, if you're doing something simple, it could be over 50% of the code you haven't actually written.
Yeah.
And I know, in a separate discussion, we'll say, that's an argument for that being a problem with Java.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you were saying that. Like, why is there so much code?
Boilerplate, right? I mean,
boilerplate, yeah.
Rightly or wrongly, but without the IDE, and to be fair, I think, thinking back when we were at university, the first time we started Java, we were basically editing them in Notepad, right?
And that was what they wanted us to do.
Yeah.
And we were like,
No.
This is madness.
Which it was, because having to manually write import statements.
Oh man. Yeah, you get them wrong, and then you run the feedback loop's awful. Whereas an IDE, it goes red, and you're like, oh, I've balls that up. I'll press alt. That's the other one. Enter.
Yeah. What does Alt-Enter do?
Oh, that's an IntelliJ, but there'll be another one. It's just like a magic light bulb fixie thing.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
Control-1, I think.
Yeah. So it's like, I think this is wrong with your code. You press the button. It's like you just basically are saying whatever the first solution you think it is, just do that, and then you learn like, oh, if that's red, I just do that, and it just like fixes everything.
The magic one in Eclipse that I use almost as often as sort of saving my code is Control-Shift-O, which is auto imports, automatically organize your imports.
Oh yeah.
So you just write some code, and it's like, don't know what that class is, because maybe you've pasted it from somewhere. Just do Control-Shift-O, and it goes, oh, these are probably all the imports you wanted.
I think some of those tools like that. I guess it just comes down to whether they're. In general, like there has been a revelation in my life, working life, and personal life. Yeah, my wife's very thrilled about this. But there's this thing called Prettier. Have I told you about Prettier? Maybe.
Prettier, I assume spelled.
It's
wrong.
very hard to say. The man that invented it is a Frenchman, and every time he says Prettier, my brain's just like, I don't. That's confusing.
So what is it?
So basically, it's a command line program that you can get on npm, so in Node. But I think I went on their website the other day. I think it supports other languages. And as input, you give it a load of source files, and then it formats them based on some research that they've done and a white paper. So basically, some computer science dude 10 or 15 years ago, maybe longer, said there's 3 rules that you need to do to format code correctly in like most cases so it looks okay to a human. And what they've done is they've parsed all the code as an AST, and then they understand all the, like this is an operator, and they really understand like they've got like an AST representation of it, and then it prints it back out in the file. And what that translates to in real life is you can cock up a file as much as you could physically imagine, and it will get it what I see as right 99.8% of the time. For JavaScript, it's insanely good.
But those rules apply for any language that they've defined, or
yes. And then there were some edge cases, and it was built by Facebook. Boo! But it was built by Facebook. I use mainly Facebook technology, so I shouldn't boo them.
Well, the Prettier thing.
Well done, guys. Yeah. So this guy, he also helps with React Native, which I use. And I saw a presentation he's given about Prettier, and it basically they went around Facebook. They've got a massive code base, and they like said when this edge case happens. So like, somebody's concatenating a string together with a lot of pluses.
Yep.
What should happen in that case? Like, should it wrap around? When should it wrap around?
Yep.
And it's very opinionated. So they basically said, this is the right one way. There's about 5 flags you can configure, but they're not very exciting. There's character width. So like you can say, I want 180 width or 120, depending on how wide your screen is. Preferably not 120.
Or 80. I mean, anyone who has that as code.
180. I think we're on 180 or 200.
Yeah.
Which is more
but
sensible.
80 is the original one.
Oh,
no, that's awful.
Square screen.
Yeah.
Not 4K. So, and it just reformats your code, but it's a command line thing. You can get an add-in for like Sublime and other things, which will just invoke it, which is what reminded me when you said of that import organize, basically.
Yeah.
So it would be a tool that could be very annoying, but it works so well that it's amazing. Right. And so on our code bases, we have it applied on Git hooks as you commit. So when you commit, all your code just gets formatted.
Yeah.
And then also continuous integration also checks that it's formatted correctly. And basically, because I was working with a load of junior developers that work for me, my life, when we added it, what was fascinating is that the later developers to come through, one of them especially, actually never gain the ability to format code themselves, which I don't know how I feel about.
What do you mean?
So
they just don't bother.
Because this tool's so good, he just knows that it's going to fix whatever he does.
But he doesn't even write it in a...
Oh, no. So he's better now, but when he started learning, he was so reliant on Prettier, he would like not indent things at all. Like not, like sometimes it's not quite right. Like when I write code, it's not quite right, and Prettier like tidies up the edges. This is like you would look at the code he'd written, and it's like all in one line. Not all in one line, but it's like, and then
really,
and then he runs Prettier, and it's like, and it's a big change. And I don't know. I think that kind of hindered him.
Yeah,
but it is.
What was he writing then? JavaScript.
Yeah. Okay. So he would somehow, he basically wouldn't indent any of his code at all.
Wow.
Yeah, which for me is like, because indenting is important because it helps.
It's the nesting, right?
It's the nesting, yeah. Because you're like, that goes inside that, and I think it just helps your brain understand what the hell's going on. But having a uniform way to enforce that on a lot of the tooling I use now is all command line driven.
Yeah.
Like Prettier, we have a lint, which is like checking that like the code is certain rules about the code and tells you off. So a lot of things that would have been in an IDE in the past, because I think IntelliJ you can have rules and stuff.
Yeah, in terms of linting, you mean? Or?
Yeah, like you can't do this, you can do that.
Yeah, I think you can. There are a lot of warnings in Eclipse. So some I used to turn on that aren't on by default. I think.
Yeah.
I can't think of any off the top of my head now, but not. I think the linters are better though. I think the linters do more than the traditional Java C# IDEs do.
Yeah.
Because I think there feels like there's a lot more settings for that stuff.
I feel much more comfortable when I have the settings for a thing committed in source.
Yes.
And I can run it on the command line. There's just something about that that's better than it being like 4 menus deep in IntelliJ where I'm like...
and then trying to export those settings to reuse them.
Yes.
In every project, for example,
yeah,
is a nightmare, right?
Yeah, something in IntelliJ I've just remembered that was a complete pain in the butt was like which files to check in so that when other people open the project in IntelliJ would know. Like that became part of your build. Like if you screwed up those files, your colleagues were like, "No, I can't build the project anymore because like IntelliJ is like messed up," and it's kind of like. So yeah, I think for me, I've come to prefer command line tools and because they're just reproducible. You're locked into a version of that tool, presumably. So like you use dependency management to be like, I want this version of this thing. Like until recently, I was using a really old version of Prettier, but I know that everyone's using the same version, so it's kind of fine.
Yeah.
And then we all upgrade together with a commit, which I think is having everything like that committed is better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think but Prettier is. I think it's more other languages. It's a really cool project that I would have guessed they would have failed at, to be honest. And when I used it for the first time, I was very surprised at how good it... There's a few slightly controversial things in it that it does that you sometimes...
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I assume the reason you like it is because you like the output. But I guess if you didn't like the output...
Yeah, it'd be horrendous.
You wouldn't like it. But I mean, you would imagine that most sensible things it does... There are things that I do, particularly when I do Java now, that I know the majority of people wouldn't like.
Yes.
And yeah, I guess then it's that question of if you're committing to a common code base, then you need to conform. So rather than me remembering to do it, the system can do it for me, right?
Yeah. So apparently in Go, I've not written a lot of Go, but what I heard is that Go has this thing called, I think it's called Go FMT or Go format. And basically the Go community and the people that make Go, they wrote a program that formats Go so that everybody that writes Go formats it the same way.
Okay.
Which kind of Python actually has as well because it's built into the language.
Because you have to tab.
You have to tab, otherwise it just doesn't run. But that's kind of what Prettier has done to JavaScript. But it came later. Yeah. So I don't know how many people are using it, but it's like, if you use Prettier, there's only one way to write JavaScript. And if you've written JavaScript for years in a certain way, you might be like, it doesn't do it how I want. But the reality is, like, these guys presumably get paid quite a lot of money to make this thing really good. And they used all of Facebook's JavaScript code as like, they literally surveyed. They went through all of the repos. I think they've got the monolith repo like Google. Yeah. So they've got like the one giant repo and they grepped it. And they were just like, in this instance, what do our developers do in what percentages?
Oh, and made the decision just on the majority.
They made the decision based on analytics of what Facebook developers were doing. And they obviously apply common sense. And then on the 40, 60, 50, 50 things, they like made some decisions. And that's maybe where you...
Do you have an example of a particularly controversial one that would...
Sometimes it takes away brackets and I'd rather it wouldn't. Because I like explicit parentheses because I'm just that kind of interesting.
So that's interesting because that's one of the things that I think I do that I would think most people wouldn't do. I would have thought that tool wouldn't have done what I would do.
Oh no, I'm the same in Excel and maths and life. I want all the parentheses because then I don't have to remember the order of the operators, and I'm the same in code. If they're all there, I'm like, I know which order this goes in. So
parentheses. You mean, sorry, round brackets.
Yeah, round brackets, yeah.
I was thinking curly brackets.
Oh, okay.
Which aren't called parentheses, I guess. That was pretty stupid.
Cool, they're called, curly brackets, are they?
Yeah.
There's so many different brackets. What do you do weird with curly brackets?
Well, the only one I have, if it's an if statement with only a return in it, I won't put curly brackets.
No.
New line and indented.
All kinds of wrong.
So I don't put it on the same line because I'm not a psychopath.
I don't actually think that one's worse than the other. They're both
Really?
just terrible. Yeah, I don't.
Okay, that's interesting. I thought that would court some controversy.
No,
but
I think. Do you know what? Like with a lot of this stuff, like code formatting, all that matters to me is that it's consistent.
Yeah.
I think if you did that, like these guys have made some decisions, and they're like, on balance, we think this way's better. But what's amazing about Prettier is it lets you.
But all the code's going to be the same. Right?
Yeah. And and it's basically enforced in both the fact that it gets auto-committed when you check in, which stops CI problems, and then CI backs it up. So if there's a green light on your CI, that all the code's formatted properly.
But then also the benefit is when you get a new person starting, they go, so, what do you do here for code? You go, well, we just follow Prettier. And then they can just look that up.
Yeah.
So they know when they're reading it what they're expecting.
There's no arguments and no ambiguity.
But even to then consume the code as well, right? So if they go, how does this look? What am I expecting to see? You just go, well, actually, by the way, it's all in Prettier. So if you don't know the rules that it enforces, read up on it, and 100% of our code looks like that.
Yeah. And
which is really cool.
Yeah, ESLint we use is the same. So I think that's been one of the biggest change. Like working with the junior team for the last couple of years, these two tools pretty much stopped me from like despair because.
So in terms of the linter, then, what does the linter do that Prettier doesn't do?
So Prettier just formats your code, but it won't, for example, say that like in JavaScript, there's often two ways of doing something. So you can import something, you can use the keyword import or require.
Yeah.
And so ESLint will be like, never use require. Yeah. You can have that as a rule. There's other things. It's more like higher level things like don't have two variables which have the same name and the same scope.
Yeah.
Lots of, there's a lot of different rules, and then you can configure them with a file. It's a lot less opinionated. So Airbnb have a really good lint. It's like the premier one that everyone uses. So we just basically use that because it's good. And then Prettier just actually indents all the code, and it's But I think overall I like the integrated IDEs for the compiled stuff because the trade-off I don't think there's a reason that someone couldn't build an IDE that was like IntelliJ with a lot of the same principles from like Sublime or Vim or VS Code, where it's like, maybe, I don't know, we haven't used it in a while. Maybe they have. Maybe there's like a JSON file that you check in, and because like the way that their config was always stored was ridiculous. It was like a whole folder of stuff.
I can tell you, having used Eclipse recently, that Eclipse hasn't changed.
Okay, well, still no surprises there.
There's still a .eclipse folder in the root of your project.
Yeah,
which,
Yeah,
I sort of get, but INI files are so sort of 1990s. They really need to get away from that. And, having one massive JSON in the root is a lot more manageable than 27 INI files.
Part of that's just times have changed.
Yeah.
And people decided like that this was better, which obviously maybe there's someone out there that's like the .eclipse folder is amazing.
Fantastic.
But it's not.
But what's I don't know if you've used VS Code, but speaking of the configuration, so its editor for the settings, you have the template JSON on the left and your settings JSON on the right. So when you change the settings in the default, it just takes the right setting as you change it to and puts it in your settings.
Oh, that's cool.
So you don't have to do your settings. You're actually doing by like drag and drop almost. You're saying, editor color blue, and then you set that, and then it will take that and be like, right, now that's part of your settings file.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice way of editing them.
Yeah.
Because it gives you all the preset values as well. So you're not going, oh, what does
Yeah, Sublime doesn't have that.
Variable X. What do I have to? What's the right answer here? If I put light blue, is it going to know what I mean? Or the values are pre-populated, and it is quite nice.
I have a very obscure setting, which was really hard to find out what it was in Sublime, which is I've actually tried to set it in VS Code, and it was hard to set in VS Code too. Which is I like to have a key combination that shows me in the tree on the left which file I'm currently editing. So it expands all the folders and takes me to that file, which is a button, which is like a target button in IntelliJ, which I always thought was a brilliant feature. I don't know if it's just the way my brain works, but I'll be editing a file, and sometimes I'll think, where the hell am I? Like I've gone down this rabbit hole. I'm like, where am I? And I'll just press this combination, and then I'll see, because I'll know like I want the adjacent file, or I want to see what other files are also in that folder. So, but that's that's one of my more niche. I
guess you get a breadcrumb that might show you where you are, but it won't show you what's nearby.
No breadcrumbs in my Sublime. Might be in the setting though. Probably it's a setting,
but it doesn't give you quite the same thing.
No. So I think.
So Pretty is interesting then. I think having a predefined way to say, I guess we've moved on slightly from IDEs here to code style.
It's kind of this.
But it's related.
It is related because IntelliJ has a format button.
Yeah, and Eclipse does as well.
Eclipse does.
And I don't like Eclipse's
No.
default.
You can like change it, but
then that comes back to your point, right? Yes, you can change it, but where the hell does that output go? Where does that configuration go? And then how do you share it and
you could
CI on it?
You could imagine an IntelliJ or an Eclipse which had this problem solved. Maybe IntelliJ has. I
would give IntelliJ a higher chance of doing it than Eclipse.
Part of that's just to do with the governance and the business models. Like they have money.
So if you only had to use one environment again ever for everything, I guess it's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I could narrow it down to just using two.
If you made me pick and then told me I was coding Java forever, that would literally be like the bargain with the devil where I'm in purgatory. It's
like pick one, but what am I going to be developing? We can't tell you that until you've picked it, sir.
In general, I prefer... I mean, you don't really do it with like IntelliJ, but I like having terminals and... Yeah. Partially because, going back, it just looks badass. I think there's an element, which is another, with Sublime. Sublime looks badass. It's got a dark theme.
Yeah, and which Vim has as well.
The guys that did Sublime, they did another thing, which we should also talk about in this, which is they did, I think I've got this right, they did a Git, like, interface. So Git,
like a source tree.
Yes, like source tree. Which, have you used that?
I have.
Do you like it?
No.
No, me neither. Atlassian is a topic for another day, but
definitely we do have different opinions on that. But source tree for me,
no. Have you used anything that you were like
a GUI based visualization tool?
Yeah,
that
you liked.
That I liked,
or that would maybe even make you think about not using the terminal.
It'd have to be a no from me.
That's a no from me, and I'm the kind of person that I would like a tool, but
so what I end up doing though is I use obviously the terminal all the time and the Git commands there. But there are some times where I go to our internal Bitbucket to view stuff because it actually does things nicer. So like the diffs, for example.
So I do that as well. Every day, all day, I push code to go and look at it in Bitbucket or GitHub.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just because the diff... Someone should build a diff that's that good. It could pop up in a browser locally. It would be amazing. Yeah. I'd use that every day because it saves... I have like some aliases on my Mac that like run commands, and like one of them is like... I have like gh-diff, which basically builds the URL. It's like some ridiculous command which quickly builds the URL and then just goes straight to the diff for the branch I'm on, so that I can quickly, because I do that so much. Yeah, which I think is and I haven't Git as well. I use a thing called Git Radar, which I think may be a Mac thing, but basically it's a command line program which builds the bash RC string to colorize and add the Git stuff to the front of your... So you can always see what branch you're in if you're in a Git repo.
Yeah, I have a separate, just a custom one that I found somewhere.
Yeah. And it shows you like how many changes, like how many files are dirty, and so you can see if you're like clean just by pressing enter. So basically, you've always got a little bit of Git status basically just in your terminal, which is... That is something in the last couple of years I have perfected. Is whatever that is, the PS1 export. PS1, like I've got one now that I'm exceedingly happy with.
Yeah, mine's very basic actually. It hasn't changed for a long time. What I do, I just have the branch generally. But do
you know what changed my life with my PS1?
What's that?
This is the last year and a half.
Not PlayStation 1.
with my this is so nerdy. My PS1 export, which is for those of you that don't know, is the it's like an export. What's the word? Environment variable.
It's an environment variable that defines what gets printed every time you press enter.
Yeah, in a terminal. Yeah. And I have a new line in it.
So every time you press enter, there's a blank line and then the PS1.
There is the PS1 and then my cursor's on a new line on the far left.
Controversial.
We can include it in the show notes. We can put it in. People might covet this PS1. We can put a screenshot of how that looks. But I saw...
Make a note of just that. I won't type on this keyboard, but make a note. We can add it in. Yeah, I'm going to immediately say that I don't like it.
You don't like that? You'll have to see. You have to see, because basically what it gives you is
gives you a lot more root space to make the PS1 longer, I guess.
Yeah, so your PS1 can be like the full directory and then you get stuff. And then in the next line, you're just like, okay, what do I want to type now? Yeah. And actually, I saw someone had it and they'd included a screenshot, and I was just instantly, I was like, I need this in my life. And so like I switched and I haven't looked back. It's considerably better actually, especially if you're working with a terminal which is like a
narrow.
slightly narrow.
Particularly if you've got, I mean, and imagine because you're doing JavaScript, you have quite a deep directory structure to end up getting quite far in.
Yeah, although I always stay in the root.
Oh, okay,
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know. I've seen people do the same, but it's not my thing.
No, not your jam. I think,
but for no particular reason other than I've never done it. I have seen other people do it, but there's nothing about it that's made me think I should change it to that.
Yeah,
I've seen Fish, which is a different shell that isn't Bash.
It's supposed to be quite good.
Yeah. Which I liked, but then couldn't be bothered to switch because everything because I've got this repo again that's all Bash files, and they don't port. You've got to actually manually write them.
It's frustrating to me. I must admit, 8 years into my professional, since I went pro, I'm sure it wasn't as glamorous as like an American football player going pro.
They didn't give you a big contract and a shirt.
Yeah. Gatorade and we didn't. Maybe I suppose it'd be Mountain Dew, wouldn't it?
It'd be amazing if you were just there at the office, just having to neck Gatorade and just every now and again mention it.
Yeah, I think you could definitely strike up a deal with Diet Coke.
Oh man.
Caffeine 3, that is your niche. That is because Jas definitely likes a Diet Coke. DC.
Yeah,
he's a big fan.
But what's funny, just about that as a side, I know you noticed. I just thought that's because we were friends. But no, apparently everybody notices. Everywhere, every place I've worked, somebody's been like, "So you have a Diet Coke every day?"
It doesn't help that afterwards you do get the refreshing taste of Diet Coke.
Which would be hilarious.
As you just put it down on the desk and just go, "Hey Dave, yeah, ready for that meeting?"
But yeah, everyone notices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think go on. You actually were saying something.
I've lost my train of thought after I went pro. Yeah, I still don't fully understand. Like Bash to me is like, is it a thing to do with the command line or is it a programming language? It's kind of like, it's blurry for me. And I kind of like, no, it's both. But yeah, it feels like they should be two separate things. And the fact that switching your like to Fish is like messing that up is irritating. I guess you can still run it by running like Bash and the thing.
Yeah, but all like the built-ins of the shell, like your aliases, environment variables, stuff, all now have to be Fish based. You can still obviously run Bash because if it's a .sh,
that's a pain.
It'll start in Bash. But that's a fair point. It's a very interesting point actually. I think Linux tools like that. I think the reason that the shell is so powerful is precisely because it's almost a programming language, but it's also a terrible
one in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of Bash. I use it a lot.
I use it a lot, and I would agree with you that it's not a nice programming language to use. It's very powerful, and when people go, I feel that, again, maybe we're veering off the topic here a little bit, but a lot of the times people are like, I'll just do this thing in Python or something, and I'm like, but it's simple enough that you could probably just do it in Bash.
There's always that time though that you think that, and then you get like an hour into it, and you're like, "Bugger! I need to go back and write all of this in Python because I had to write an if statement, and the if statement syntax is so unbelievably bad in Bash that I can't write if statement. I mean, like literally, I have to Google it almost every time I do
2 square brackets. That's the key.
Oh yeah, obviously.
But not one.
And don't forget the spaces. Because it's game over. It's like, this is...
Oh, no, but if you do one, it then behaves differently to if you use 2 as well.
Oh, my God.
And it's just...
Can you think of another language that's in? Because I can't. Where the number of brackets are in an if statement. Can you think of a language where there's an option to have more than one? It's just, like, when you think about it, it's just like, what the heck?
But then when you realise the reason that is like that, it's really weird. It's because the open square bracket is actually a program.
Right.
That's getting run to do that evaluation.
Gosh.
That's why there's got to be a space.
Right, so you're basically saying, like, eval this.
Yeah. So,
that is...
Which is... You sort of... It's one of those things that you sort of learn it and you go, you sort of forgive Bash, but it still doesn't make it right because the syntax is appalling.
I think it's like all these things, like... There's a trade-off, which is that Bash is in... Like, if, like us, so, like, you may... Well, actually, you're a bit of a weird one. I have not worked on Windows now I started my career working at university. They installed Linux on all the desktops.
We use Linux in work in our university labs. Yeah.
So we built up at least a base proficiency, and then once you get proficient with it, I haven't met many people that have got proficient with it, and then are like, I'm just going to use Windows for the rest of my career, unless there's like a reason, like they join a C# team or something. But like, I think it's kind of natural to stay with it because as a programmer, if it was like my mum, I probably wouldn't recommend. You know, it's like you come home, it's like everything's broken again because it's Linux. But But like for us, it's kind of cool. But
that's interesting. I think the reason that's one of the reasons I really don't like Mac is because I think their Linux environment isn't Linux, right, for a start.
It's not.
So all of the commands are subtly different.
I don't really know it's not.
No, you maybe don't, and I don't, and probably I would say 95% of people don't. But
yeah,
there are fundamental differences, and then Bash on Windows. It's an absolute game changer. I think really.
I think it is. Yeah,
I think things like that before, like I guess we're getting off topic a little bit, but Cygwin I think was always a fudge, and if you really needed to use Cygwin, you should be using something else other than Windows.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of like an emulator. I don't even know how on earth it worked.
They compiled all the executables that you use in Linux on the shell, like ls. They compiled Windows versions of those.
.exes.
Yeah, so it would be ls.exe.
But it was like for those of you who haven't seen it, Windows 10.
Yeah.
There's like a thing you can enable, and Jas is probably going to explain to you how it works, but I'll explain what it does, which is that you get something that looks like it and feels like a Linux terminal, but it is running very close or natively.
It's native, yeah.
It's native, but
so it's the same binaries. So you have the Ubuntu install. It's the same packages that you would install on an Ubuntu server.
Mm.
And what the Microsoft guys have done, which is nuts, is the layer between all the system calls. Basically, they've re-implemented. They've implemented them all to interface with the direct Windows ones.
Right.
So all the way up to the kernel, it's basically as if it's running on Linux.
So it's not a VM.
No.
So like you can Vim a file that's like on your like desktop on Windows, and you actually can do that. And you can navigate around all those folders like natively.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But you can also at the same time you can apt-get install something if you are that way inclined with Ubuntu.
Yep.
So I haven't really kicked the tires on it, but it is if you're Mac OS development, like iOS development and sort of app building aside, that's quite compelling to me to be able to like.
I mean, you're in a difficult position because, like you said before, you're writing iOS apps, right? So Xcode or bust, basically.
Yeah, I need to spend £1 million on a Mac to do that. So yeah, but I think.
But yeah, I think generally. So the only reason that I haven't switched my development to local Windows with Bash on Windows is purely due to the KDB and its licensing model. It means I can't.
Yes.
Which again is not a topic for now, but I can't do that. But for everything else, like you can put Linux you can install Oracle Java inside Bash and it run. So you're running the Linux version of Bash on your Windows PC. Which is crazy.
It is great. It's awesome. I think I'd be a little bit worried, like, will everything always work in that environment?
Yeah, so there's definitely things that don't work still. And they're improving it with every, Windows as a service now.
Yeah.
So it gets better every time. There are still things like Nmap as a networking tool, particularly around sockets and things. They haven't implemented all of the system calls. So you'll try and run something and it'll just be like, system call says, not implemented.
Whoops.
And it just doesn't work. But most things do. And it's very, very good. I think the other thing to say is it's slower than Linux. Like particularly if you're thinking about like on the C++ side in my current job, you can't compile the app anywhere near as quickly as you can on a window. But
it will compile.
But it will compile.
Not bad.
And you can do things like htop.
Yeah.
So you can run htop and view your CPU usage
on Windows
of your whole PC. So it's tracking the total RAM of the PC.
That's crazy.
And the CPU. And in my head, that's just nuts.
That is crazy that they.
Which is but also impressive. What it's also forced them to do is make the Windows command prompt not terrible.
Yeah.
Because it uses the Windows command prompt to do its rendering. So they've had to make it a lot more Linux compatible and also modernized it to the point where if you're a Windows, a Windows admin from 20 years ago, and you want the old one, there's an option to revert it, but by default you get one that isn't actually strictly compatible.
You can resize it. Goodness me!
In active resizing.
Oh.
So it basically is like it's basically like putty.
Okay.
It's almost like I've got iTerm here on this Mac here. It's equivalent to that.
Yeah, that's good because iTerm's like it's not glorious, but it's fine.
It's like, the basic terminal in Mac is pretty basic, right? But iTerm does a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, maybe iTerm. Yeah, iTerm's good. Yeah,
maybe it's not even as good as iTerm.
iTerm 2 is good. I used to use that. That would actually be the one that I would probably use if it wasn't for the vanity of how amazingly colourful hyperlinks.
Well, you've got to. I feel this at work as well, though, like where I sit. I always have as many putty windows open at any one time because it just looks like you're doing something really clever.
Your compensation is going to be tightly linked, I'd imagine, to how many you have open. There's something else we haven't talked about in Sublime, actually, whilst we're talking about vanity, which is, and probably some other IDEs, but Sublime has an awesome feature where you can select some text and then you can press Apple D or Control D and it will find that text. So say you select the like characters like HE, then you would like press Control D and it will select all the HEs it can find.
Yeah, I've seen that feature.
And then you can just type and all the cursors will type and you look like you're in the Matrix. And people behind you, like I've been in a coffee shop and I'm pretty sure,
there's many coffees have been spilled.
Yeah, no, an attractive woman's walked behind me and just binned her coffee on the floor. she's just what?
What? Say what now?
He's edited six lines of code simultaneously. My hero. So yeah. But I think the main thing with all of this stuff though, I've watched there's a guy called Fun Function who's on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel kind of helping people who are maybe also quite experienced software developers, but helping them get better.
Yeah.
And he was basically making the case that you can spend far too long faffing with like development environment. And I think both of ours are actually, like we've obviously like tweaked things like, you've got, probably 2 pieces of A4 with the instructions of how to copy and paste something between two terminals. And I've.
But explaining it to somebody else, it's a pain, right? But I can do it quickly.
You just do it. But you kind of optimize. But I think the thing is, you can spend too long on it, and the main thing is figuring out in your workflow if something's taken you ages every day. Like that thing I mentioned with GitHub, where I realized in my flow of work, I was doing the same thing, and I would go to GitHub.com. And then like type stuff in to be like, I want to go here and look at this diff. And I was like, if I build an alias for this, it's literally going to save me like, I don't know if it's like
minutes a day,
ROI positive yet. Probably getting close by now. I've been using it for like a year and a half. And I gave it to some other members of my team, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, like if you can find things like that where you really get speed ups.
But I think what's interesting, because you end up using lots of smaller tools, it's a bit like the way we like developing code, right? It's you can switch individual things out.
Yes.
Because you're not bought into the entire thing.
Yes, that's a massive point. Because like if Prettier Tomorrow's rubbish, or they like abandon it, because it's a good idea, someone will have built something similar and you'll just tag it out. Whereas if you're in like Eclipse and you decide that there's like a better, you're like, oh, well, it's not in Eclipse, and you're kind of like, I think it's like the all-in-one versus it's not modular, is it?
Like imagine converting between Eclipse and IntelliJ, which is something I tried to do. And,
that's tough.
Yeah. Particularly if it's a complex app, I think you've got hard work ahead of you.
It's the same sort of argument really with the advanced package support that Sublime's packages are a bit, but Atom and VS Code have really good packages, and you can tag them out for other things. Yeah. And I don't use many, to be honest. Just like a theme, just so that I can really impress people. But other than
as long as it's dark, right? That's the only real rule.
Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. So the Git, like the source tree equivalent, that the Sublime people made, they made it, and it's completely free, but not if you want the dark theme, because they know developers. I was reading on Hackadees, and they were like, these guys know what they're doing, because they know that like if they add like a thing like that, originally in Sublime there was like a purchase me button. Sublime's $70, and like for the amount I use it, that's the bargain of the century. But like a lot of people I think just use Sublime and then got annoyed with them because it was popping up. So in this one they were like, we're going to make it completely free unless you want the sexy dark theme.
Then you can give us the money.
And you know that like a lot of developers are paying them like however many dollars it is, because you're just like, well, especially now that Mac of this week or like the last 6 months come out with the dark theme as well.
Oh, in their new Mojave.
Yeah, maybe they knew Mojave, yeah. in the Mojave. But I think, the main thing is not to, like, despite the fact that we've just discussed it for probably getting on for an hour, to not spend too much time worrying about it.
But I think it took. I think what you say is correct, but I think it's that feeling comfortable doing your work, right?
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable in something and you have to do something where you're not comfortable, it's very easy to spend hours trying to get it like the way you wanted it before, right? So like I could spend half an hour playing with IntelliJ to get it more like Eclipse.
Yeah.
Whereas realistically, I should probably just be using Eclipse and not wasting an hour.
Yeah, like you're winning with these tools when like everything's smooth and you're not fighting it and you're not thinking about it. But there's like a difficult decision when you need to do something new. Like if tomorrow you need to do some Python stuff and you're like, do I set up Sublime? And you can spend like 3 hours like configuring Sublime to be just the way you want it to then use it for an hour. And you've just always got to be thinking, I guess it's just like the return on investment of like...
I guess to some degree that the full packaged IDEs, or whatever phrase we're using for those, like Eclipse and IntelliJ, or the equivalents in other languages, if you're starting from nothing, they're a great place to start because you get everything in one place, right?
Yeah,
it's almost like, I wouldn't say they were beginners tools because that's not fair because they obviously do a lot. But for somebody starting fresh, you'd be like, look, you're going to do Java. Here's Eclipse.
Everything, yeah.
Or here's IntelliJ. Everything you need to do is within this window.
Yeah, if you're in a team, like I had a team and we used Sublime and we used these tools, but I set up all the other tools so they didn't have to. But if you'd have just said to them, go away, maybe use Sublime, they're not going to pick up prettier. Whereas those kind of features are kind of more built in. You're more likely to stumble on code formatting in IntelliJ because it's there.
And now that we're slightly further on in our careers, between us, I think, as this hour and 15 as so far as demonstrated, is we have our ways of doing them, but they're not. We haven't just plucked them out of thin air. They've been built up, right? Yeah. So your Sublime settings and config and plug packages have come from you using it for a long period of time. Same with the way I use Vim, right? It's not just you go on any Linux install and run Vim and that's what I'm using.
No, you got a lot of config.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not necessarily even a lot, but just get it to a point where I can start work and be comfortable quickly.
Yeah. I guess that's what the Twilight years will be about, us sticking to our ways and never changing anything ever
it's again. Like, where's Vim? They go, no, we don't.
Jas, it's 2030. What are you doing?
It's like, put your VR glasses on.
That's what I was gonna, get that VR headset on.
It's like, no, just give me a keyboard.
I want a 4K monitor. They'll be like, no, you need to put the VR headset on. Get in the reclining chair and just get on with your work. And you'll be like, no, I don't want to.
Can I talk to you on a phone? Or
oh, God. No, I think I'm past that one already.
Cool. So is there anything else you want to say on IDEs?
No, I think we've...
I mean, that is an hour and 20, so...
An hour and 20. Comprehensive IDE chat.
Maybe not necessarily in the right order, but there's a lot in there. So I guess then something we thought we'd do after our in-depth IDE speak, or main topic as we're calling it, we do something not lighter. We called it lighter, but it isn't lighter. It's just a bit light relief, where Rich is going to tell a short story. No. Well, we just talk about something that isn't, hardcore on the development side. And this week it actually is quite related, and we've touched to it already a little bit, which is PC versus Mac and the general state of play.
What developer machine might you want to buy?
Yeah. If you're starting from scratch, I guess.
And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I'm rocking a MacBook Pro that is 3, maybe getting on for 4 years old, and I have not seen anything that makes me want to replace it. And that is not the kind of person that I normally...
Including the new Macs, to be absolutely clear.
Yeah, yeah. Like mainly, I pretty much need a Mac because I do iOS development. And Apple... This is maybe a little bit controversial because the fanboys may come for me. So I've used a Mac... I think I got my first one 8 years ago, and I've used it for my job for like 5 years. Mm-hmm. So not forever, to be fair. I do really like it, mostly. But what I don't like is how much memory they give us. And I think I'm not the only person. I've seen a lot of video editors on the line talking about how it's pretty annoying. And they've released now one with a 32 gigs of RAM.
Is that the maximum?
That is, that's the max you can get. Right. So up until this last, I don't remember. We're a little bit out of date, but you'll have to forgive us because it's our first one.
So I think this is the first generation they've switched to DDR4, which does allow more than 16. Is that my understanding?
There's some reason that they didn't want to do that. I think power consumption.
Power consumption, yeah.
And so now there is a MacBook Pro. So I'm talking about laptops here. So there are lots of desktops that will. They're to be honest.
But Mac, do the Macs, apart from that, I mean, the Mac Pro is ridiculous, right? So I'm assuming you're not going to recommend a Mac Pro, even if it could support 64 gig of RAM.
The trash can, yeah. So that
is out, I guess. As even
that thing. I've watched a lot of a couple of YouTubers, but MBK HD, he had one, and I think they didn't refresh it for like 5 years.
Have they even refreshed it now?
I think they are going to, or maybe they just did. But like, they left people like.
What was interesting about that was that I read something. It must have been on Hacker News, but they were saying basically the problem they had with it is they developed it. the reason it's that shape is to get massive amounts of airflow through the center of it where the graphics cards are, because they were assuming that it would all be graphics.
Yeah.
But then they've realized that actually the latest Intels are quite power hungry and get quite hot. So then the way they built it, they weren't really expecting that or something. So they're really struggling.
It is a sad state of affairs, because especially here in the UK, and maybe in the US it's a little different, but the price of a Mac in dollars to pounds makes them very expensive. I don't think we're the only country where this is true.
No.
I think India, gets a really raw deal, and I don't know about Australia.
But I mean, here, for example, it's pretty much whatever the price is in dollars, it's the same price.
Yeah, it's the
same value in pounds.
Yeah. So if a Mac's $1,700, it's more or less £1,700,
which obviously is not right.
It's not ideal, because you every time someone goes to the US, you're like thinking about you should never do that. That's bad. But
HMRC will be on the case.
We don't want them chasing
the one person that's listening, Mr. HMRC. We'll get him.
Just our luck. just some sort of. I'll get a phone call.
So the 16 gig of RAM was a big problem, right? And is now fixed in the sense that you can order more than 16 gigabytes in a laptop.
In a really high end model.
Yeah.
So the model I have now is I think I've got a 15-inch. MacBook Pro, and it's near the bottom of the line.
So it's got an i5, I assume.
7?
Oh, it has got an i7, so that must have been an upgrade.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't have a 7. It's an i5 or an i7, I don't even know. It's got 16 gig of RAM, and it doesn't have the dedicated graphics card.
Right. And it has an SSD, I see.
And it struggles, and it has 256 SSD. So I don't know what that is. It's probably about 1,700 quid's worth back in the day. And now, quids is pounds for anyone. But, But yeah, this new one, I think it's over $2,000. It's something crazy. It's not all of them. It's only the touch bar, so it's not the ones without.
You can't get the 32 gig in a non-touch bar Mac.
And I have
interesting.
I think, like many people on the internet, I do not have much interest in having a touch bar, and I have not yet to see any instance of people using it where I think, oh, I really want. I
don't think I've even seen one in real life.
I think I have, but it's just unimpressive, and
I don't understand why you'd want.
It's just dynamic, so depending on what app you're in depends on what.
But you can't. You have to look at it to touch it, right?
Muscle memory is not really going to be very handy, because first of all, there's no button to muscle with, and second of all, where things are changes.
Yeah.
So it's more like an iPad, sort of more like a phone built into the top of your keyboard, but it's also not on your keyboard if you're docking these things. And I use my Mac docked, I would say 90% of the time.
It's a waste of money.
Yeah. So when I look at buying a Mac now, I almost think the 13-inch or the lowest 15-inch without the touch bar, if that even if a thing, is the one I'd want to buy. But then you can't get 32 gigs of RAM. And because of the unique way that the Google engineers have designed Chrome, that's a big problem, because
as we said earlier, right? Because you've got 4 Chromes basically that you're running.
So things I cannot do on my Mac, which I assume would be the same on anything other than this new 32 gig one, which is basically, so we're talking about 95% of MacBook Pros. So we're talking about, when I say Mac, I'm talking about MacBook Pros, because I think MacBook Air
is not for development.
No, not really. No. I some people will be like, oh yeah, but
do imagine running Xcode on that.
Yeah, running Xcode on my Mac. So the thing that I struggle with is if I want to run a simulator in Xcode, which is not that ridiculous, bearing in mind that Apple write all of this software themselves, and then the 3 Chromes that come with all the Electron apps. And I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of Electron apps, especially as a JavaScript developer. I have a problem with how much memory Chrome uses by default, and the fact that these things aren't being shared, and it's so Chrome's using 6 gigs of RAM, and then Xcode's got 2 or 3, and it is actually quite possible for me to get into swapping. So I'll run out of memory and it's writing to disk.
Yeah,
that's happened to me quite a few times, and Mac does not handle that very gracefully either. It
does seem to struggle with swapping. Is a bad time on Mac, isn't
it? The thing that my Mac does maybe someone will correct me, but what it does for me is it basically hangs any application that wanted more memory and couldn't get it. So I have to quit everything. I have to
because I guess it's waiting to write it out to disk.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the disk is slow. Well,
maybe.
But it's SSD, so you'd expect it to be quite.
On Windows it would kind of just jutter and stall, but it doesn't really do that. They just kind of give up. Which I don't know if that's better or worse, because you can't even really. It's better because you can resolve the problem, which on Windows sometimes I've noticed it gets so bad that you can't
even kill it.
You can't kill things. Well, you can kill things, but you're never going to get your work back. So if you could have, it is. So yeah, that is kind of my beef, and I'm really, because I do iOS development,
So what in that sense then, you've got an old MacBook Pro that isn't doing what you want it to do, and
What do?
you don't really want to buy a new one.
Well, so I don't know. We should look up. Let's quickly look up how much the one I need would cost me, because it is.
And this will be in pounds sterling for those listening.
We can convert it, but at some point, we might not though.
Google can do that.
Google can do it for you. Yeah.
Let's just do inclusive of VAT as well, because here in the UK we have to pay VAT. So
to Philip, up to 32 gigabytes of memory from running multiple pro apps because you're a professional.
You are a pro.
15-inch. I feel like I'm going to get this wrong, especially looking at it on my phone. I'm sorry. I just pressed 15-inch.
And it's already what's the base price?
£2,349. So 2.3k and a bit and change.
Was that the 32 gig
15.
one?
Let me see 13. No. I hang on. So 13-inch looks like it starts at 12.49. Let's see if you can get that. That only includes 8 gig of RAM.
Yeah.
They bumped the prices.
Yes, they have. I think this time they did. I mean, the Mac Mini is a great example of the price bump, right?
Yeah, only 16.
So you have to get a 15 minimum to get the 32 gig.
Oh yeah. Let's have a look.
I feel technically that's not. I don't think that's a technical issue that stopped them from doing that.
So like a base, the cheapest 32 gig laptop. So that's a 2.2 gigahertz, 6-core, 8th gen, like i7.
Yeah.
Which may or may not overheat, depending on who you listen to. Like no graphics cards upgrades or anything, and then 256 of storage, which is the lowest.
Are we talking $2,500?
Maybe, I think more. It doesn't even. It's embarrassed. It doesn't even want to show me the price. Oh no, it does. There you go. I'm just blind. 2.7k.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
That's a ridiculous amount.
That's nearly twice what I paid for my current one.
But it isn't twice as good.
I mean, I know there's inflation. Yeah, and it will be a bit better. The processors have improved.
Yeah, but as in
USB-C.
You could just buy another one of yours and split your work over two.
Do you know what? That's not the most outlandish. I mean, no. In all seriousness, though, I work from home and then I have an office.
You could have one in each location.
Yeah, I could buy. I don't know, like a Mac Mini. I don't know if I could get that, or I'm not a big fan of the iMacs because monitors. In my mind, a computer might last me 3 years, 5 years if I buy a really good one.
Yeah,
it's not going to go much beyond 5 years. Not as your pro machine.
No.
Pro machine that you're using.
Yours is at 4, so you've not got long.
Yeah.
But you're right. The monitor, it feels like you should keep them separate.
Yeah.
Monitor and processor.
Yeah, and so like where it's integrated, I'm kind of like. I mean, those displays do look beautiful, but it's like.
You've got the iMac Pro, which I think you can put the Pro version of the iMac, right, which they released last year, which you can put, I think, a Xeon in. So I think that means you can have up to 64 gig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can go up to 128 in those bad boys, but they're expensive as well.
They're ridiculous.
But I need to buy two because I work in two places.
Yeah.
So, but maybe a Mac Mini.
So the Mac Mini used to be a great idea, right? Because it was by far the cheapest way to get into Mac. But then the base now has gone up from, I think it was 500 maybe to 750.
Yeah, and they didn't release one for like bloody ages.
Yeah, so I have one here that's the late 2014 model. And that was the most recent one until 3 weeks ago.
Oh, right, so it was bang up to date.
Yeah, until
I think they forget.
This is the best one. For me, this is, I mean, I'm not a big Mac fan. I'm sure we can talk about that in a minute, but this is the best one. If you had to pick one, the form factor is just so nice.
It is. I would, if I worked like exclusively from one office, I'd consider it. But my problem is that, like on Friday I went on a train and like I worked from another city for a bit and
you're going to need a laptop as well, aren't you?
Yeah. But then you have the problem of like, if you could just pay a bit extra to have a laptop which does the job, but you don't have to move all your files around. So you're like,
have it just as your primary.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to make sure all the same software is installed. And okay, in theory, but like with some things,
it is nicer just to have that one device that you can just take everywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely like the best way, but like for 2.7K,
That's too much money.
yeah, that'll be like over $3,000 in, I don't even know. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't even,
That's just too much. So I guess then,
so I don't know what I'm going to do.
basically, hence why you would like to discuss it.
Yeah, I mean,
the other thing, the only thing that you could realistically do, in my opinion, is that you isolate the Xcode development to a Mac and then move off Mac for everything else, right?
yeah. But like if you're building apps like that, right now I'm working on an app as my primary job, and it would be very inconvenient. I could do the Android development elsewhere, but there's like VMs in the cloud we've talked about before. You can lease
A Mac.
a Mac, yeah. And then like VNC into it. But
the problem is then it's like what I do with my job, right, at KDB.
Yeah,
your files are then far away from the development or the running environment.
Exactly. It is. It's a bit of a pain, and Apple are really like. I don't think I would still be working on a Mac if tomorrow you said to me you're never going to build an iOS app again, which is probably a good way of leading on to what's your dream boat if you were. I mean, I guess at the moment you work a kind of office job and they provide you with
ridiculous PC.
High spec, is it? Or low spec?
Very, very well, weird spec, I would say.
None of the above.
Yeah, well, so the workstations that they bought us are Dell Precision workstations, so they probably are $2,000 each, and they have a 12-core, 24-thread Xeon in them.
Goodness me!
But only 16 gig of RAM. But they have a 256 gig SSD.
Okay.
And we have 4 1080p monitors.
Okay.
Of which I only use 3 because I think 4 monitors is ridiculous.
It's excessive.
Yeah. I'd rather have 2 higher resolution monitors. But somebody decided to buy some terrible 1080p monitors instead.
Brilliant.
So they ghost like crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen ghosting.
No.
I've never seen it before.
Well,
when you scroll, you actually see the image fade away.
Oh.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They're like one of those Argos monitors from the 90s.
These are ASUS. These are ASUS.
Really?
Yeah, they're really bad.
That's shocking.
Really bad monitors.
4K all the way for me, by the way.
This one here, for me, I love this monitor that I have here, which
What's
is
this one?
1440p, 25-inch.
No, I've got at home. I've got 2 4K monitors side by side, and at work at my office I have one. And every time I go there, I'm like, I need to buy another one.
Need 4 of these across 2 locations. So I'm firmly in the PC camp because I have the option to pick because I don't do any Xcode development.
Would you run a Linux? Is that the correct terminology?
a Linux.
Would you run a Linux?
As my primary. So if we're talking just about work. I would consider it just in the situation where I was working. The only thing is there are things about Windows that I just like day to day.
Yeah. If you're just like going to browse the internet.
But a lot of what you do at work is, a lot of what we do at work is browsing the internet.
That's true.
Because, what would you do without Stack Overflow?
We'd get fired pretty quickly.
But there's a lot of that. And, particularly in an office, you're going to be using Microsoft's Office products.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I guess I managed to avoid. I forgot that those existed for a minute, thankfully. I use Word.
Yeah, but Outlook, you do get Outlook on Mac, but you don't get Outlook on Linux.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So Linux for me is probably always going to be... I would consider it, but I think it's always going to be third in that list.
Yeah, I guess you could VM. I guess maybe you could run a Linux and then VM.
Or you could use just the web-based version, which is actually very good. And the web-based versions of all of the Microsoft Online...
They're not bad.
They're actually all pretty good now. They're almost as good as the Google.
I use Google Docs for I get to pick everything. Well, more or less, not quite, but I use Google Docs. But
yeah, I think for me it's Windows. I like it. People, give it such a bad rep. I'm not saying you do, but a lot of people, particularly some of these C++ guys, go absolutely nuts for it and they hate it so much. But I just don't buy it. I just don't buy the hatred for it.
I think Microsoft have made some progress since Windows 10. I think
since it came out.
Yeah, I'm very happy. Since they made it, I think they seem to have. I like the fact that they're kind of. I don't know if this is still true, but they're sort of touting it as the last Windows.
Yeah, Windows as a service.
Yeah, which I think is major version upgrades. We've seen a lot of Google with Chrome of changed the game in the way that like a product could be released. They like, I mean, Chrome these days, again, we're giving it a hard time, but you know, the way it updates, it's always just up to date somehow. God knows what they're doing, but like that is pretty great. And Windows, and as well with Edge, they're finally, for the web developers like me out there, they're kind of
moving forward at least.
Yeah, like you know in like 5 years' time that you won't be in this ridiculous situation where you're like, oh, someone's using an old version of IE, because basically now they're kind of committed. I think they're committed to doing what Chrome have done, where they aggressively make everyone upgrade Edge all the time.
Yeah,
which will just be so much better for the web. But yeah, I don't mind it. I think the Bash thing, and you can always run a VM, which could be fine if you've got a powerful machine.
I think if you wanted to run Linux, if you for some reason didn't want to use Bash on Windows, or they, you know, whatever reason they wouldn't let you run it, I think the other thing that I used to do before that existed was use VMware's professional version, whatever it is, workstation, and they have a thing called Unity, which
the windows are like in the operating system.
Yeah, so you don't have the desktop of the VM, you just have the applications open, so it looks like they're native, but obviously they're running in the
that's
VM.
good,
and that's quite good. But again, for me, Bash on Windows does everything I want it to do, give or take, and I just like Windows. Mac annoys me for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, it's an opinion, and it's not one that actually is that well agreed with. I mean, the hardware is unbeatable. I think there's no argument there
in terms of build quality,
and
the
trackpads are amazing. There's no trackpads.
There's a lot of hate for the keyboards right now. I haven't tried the new one, which I'm keeping my old clicky clackies. Another reason.
Yeah, I feel it's okay. I mean,
they seem okay.
I think the trackpad is probably still the best trackpad.
Yes.
Then the negatives with the hardware are that the internals aren't kept quite as cutting edge as you will get if you go to someone like Dell or Microsoft's Surface. I'm a big Surface fan. I own a Surface Pro 4. And it's a great bit of kit. Having a touchscreen on a laptop, I think once you've done that, you don't.
I've never done that.
You don't want to go back. I think it's not. It doesn't change the world, but it you interface with it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I do like the Surfaces a lot. Again, but then you get into the same problem. The reason I like my Surface is I've got a relatively cheap one and I'm using it at home. To get one that then is good enough to develop in,
would you consider
it's going to be expensive.
What's that one called with the screen disconnects?
The book.
The with the bendy.
Yeah. I think that would be the only. I think that would probably be the only one you could realistically get for development.
Yeah.
And that's going to be $2,000.
So what else we got? So like, have you ever thought about it? Like, if tomorrow you went in and you just you just anger quit, and then you had to get home and you were like, I've got to get some hardware. Yeah. What are you getting? You going to get a laptop or what's your...
Well, I have my gaming PC here, which is, you made me buy.
So we could play computer games together. Much to the dislike of our respective wives.
So that's me sorted from a desktop point of view. I'm well set. I put 32 gig of RAM in that bad boy. So that's going to be set.
That's good.
That's set for a long time.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, you'd be fine. I guess as long as you didn't have to go anywhere.
That's the thing. So then...
You could strap it to your back.
Yeah, instead of going to the gym. So when I worked in my startup before this current job, I was single device, and I had a Dell Latitude.
Oh yeah,
laptop,
I've forgotten about that.
Which I still have in this desk here that has not been turned on for about a year and a half. And I liked it. The good thing about the Dell, rightly or wrongly, you say what you want about Dell, because,
I wasn't thinking it.
Couldn't even keep a straight face. But their Latitude range of laptops have some features which just make a lot of sense from a business point of view. So the dock.
Yeah, the dock.
They have a built-in dock. The laptop comes with a particular special thing underneath to dock it to a specific dock.
And you're just done.
So when I was working on my startup, I had one here, one in the office. So at night, there's just a big eject button, and you can do it with it powered on.
Oh, that's cool.
You can just eject it all because it's all built in natively. So the internal drivers know what they're doing, basically. Click it on at home, bring it home, click it back in, and you're back to where you were. And that's, I do really like that from a single device. And I think if I was going to get a laptop, the only other brand of laptops that I like the look of but have never bought are the Razer ones.
Oh, interesting. I thought you were going to say Lenovo ThinkPad.
Yeah, I do like those.
You commented those?
I've coveted a Razer.
Have you sort of, there's like that meme where the guy's looking over his shoulder, you know,
you're
walking along with your Dell.
With my Dell. And looking in the background.
Look back at the Razer or the Lenovo.
I would say the Lenovo, yeah. You know, I do like them, but the Razer ones they have that really thin one that does look, or did look when I was looking at them before, like really nice bit of kit. And they spec them. I mean, they're gaming PCs, so they're spec'd well as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, okay, you get the discrete graphics, which for development doesn't really make a difference, but they're going to give you...
Do you know what I've had a problem with a lot? Me and my brother who I worked with, we both hate... I don't know if it's a problem with that we don't have the higher graphics card. I mean, obviously, I'd probably be bankrupt if I'd have bought one of those. But with 4K... And bearing in mind that I don't know what monitors all of these laptops presumably are coming with.
Retina.
Yeah, Retina or 4K or whatever you want to call it, 5K, whatever we're on. It's just when you screen share on a Mac, the burden of sharing 4K of whatever it's doing, like downscaling it really, if you've got some, even if you were just screen sharing Chrome and you had nothing else open, you notice mouse lag. It's not on. I mean, this is on the slide. They may have, the newer ones, maybe it's better because the technology's caught up. But 2 or 3 years ago, these, the brand new laptops from a couple of years ago, like 2015, 16, no good.
Wow.
Not a problem you see much on Windows from what I've seen.
No.
But maybe it's a graphics card thing. I don't know. I don't know what that uses.
I used to have a little Intel NUC, those little like...
Oh, yeah.
Computers in a very, it's basically like a Mac Mini, but a quarter of the size. And those again, if you were thinking about a cheap desktop for a PC, is get you more or less the way there because you provide your own RAM, and I put 16 gig in mine.
I think that upgradability, the fact that that's not in Mac, like if I could just smash in another 16 gig of RAM now, I think this laptop would.
So that's a good thing, with my Dell. I came with 8. When I started my job at the startup, I instantly put another 8 in.
Yeah.
So I got 16 and. I mean, it already had an SSD in and it was an i7. So from that point of view, it was fine. The only problem with that Dell, of course, was the screen was terrible. It was non-HD.
But it's probably a bit old.
1366.
I guess that's something that's a must. Another thing on the Macs, which I think some of these other Windows laptops are doing better, is the bezels on the Macs are still a bit embarrassing, especially as smartphones are basically the bezels.
Yeah, the Dell ones have very, very narrow bezels. I mean, like this screen is a sort of similar idea, right? The bezel is...
Yeah, that's pretty thin. Yeah, my monitors at home have quite thin bezels, but the Mac, every time I use the Mac now, it's like, I know it's 3 years old, but I don't think they haven't changed it much, to be honest.
No, I don't think it's changed much.
The Air was a bit better when they just released that after however many years again, and they just left everyone in the dark.
They discontinued it and then brought it back, didn't they?
Yeah. I don't think they officially discontinued it.
Oh, did they? They probably were still selling it.
I'm not sure many people were expecting to see another one turn up, to be honest, but I don't know. I don't follow the hype. But I was going to ask you, have you seen I think it's called is it called the Lenovo Carbon? You seen that laptop?
Yeah.
I know McKinsey, that's like if you see someone with that laptop, that's probably...
That's a $2,000 laptop though, I think.
Yeah.
To get a good spec one.
Yeah, they look quite good.
So, but what's interesting, I think, you mentioning that one, the Surface, to get a good Windows-based development laptop, in my head, the number's $2,000.
Yeah.
To get the
to be fair, you will get a lot.
But you'll get a lot more lower down the range. I mean, the good thing about Windows is you can spend from anywhere from £200 to £2,000.
Yeah, that's true.
And you could just go as far as you want. And if you're willing to put up with slower compilation time, and you don't have the cash, you buy a £500 laptop.
I mean, if this machine is your machine that you do, you've gone pro, you've got your DC endorsement, like Jas here, and your Diet Coke endorsement, then you, I think spending $2,000 on a laptop for work, it's like, or if your company's buying it for you.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's not a laptop that you're using just out of hours. It's one you're spending your 8 hours a day on, right? Whether it's the company paying for it or you're working and you need to buy it for yourself.
So I don't know if you remember this story, but when we graduated, I had a job at a big company doing IntelliJ, so like JavaScript using a Javaverse using IntelliJ.
Yeah.
And for various reasons to do with my team in that company, we were stuck on 32-bit Windows. So I could not have more than 4 gigs of RAM or 3.6, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I remember once I stayed late at work and my boss's boss walked past my desk and said, "Oh, Richard, you're here late?" And I was thinking, yeah, this is great. She was like, "Why are you here so late?" And I was just sat in front of a screen, like a square screen with IntelliJ. And I was like, "Oh, my whole computer's just hung because I don't have enough memory. And this is my life. Like all day, I try and do things, and then it just like freaks out because I really need like 8 gigs of RAM. This was like 2010, and I remember like in a nod to corporate, she went, "Oh, okay, we'll see you tomorrow." I went on like that.
Nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, just completely. There were reasons. Other people did have more RAM around me, but just we were stuck because we had to use some VPN software that was like something like that. Some VPN software that only ran on 32-bit and didn't work for us on 64.
But that 4 gig. It's amazing to think that 4 gig of RAM you could do anything useful.
Yeah. I guess I mean that was probably at the time not that bad, but now that seems mental, doesn't it? Like you wouldn't leave home without 16 really for a development machine.
So if you had to pick the cheapest Mac that you would work with if somebody was going to buy it for you, what would the
13-inch MacBook Pro? But I think I would want 16 gig of RAM. If you said to me you only doing, so the thing that makes me a sellout is that I'm saying, I do iOS development. The truth is, if tomorrow you were like, you never have to do iOS development, I think I would still maybe keep my Mac because I really like Unix-based environments, and the Mac. In my mind, what Mac really is, I know it's not this to many other people, probably, especially like creatives and other people that use a lot of Macs, is it has a pretty good, quite close to Linux, Unix terminal, and it all works most of the time because it's mum and pop kind of stuff. So like,
it's a good hybrid between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Which what you don't get with Linux itself, right?
No, Linux is pretty unforgiving, and like I mean, I don't know if the times have changed, but in the past, if you had a Linux laptop. And I know some people on Hacker News, I see they're like, I've done it and I love it. But I would hazard a guess that they're still spending a significant portion of their time mucking about with things that aren't proper work. Because,
does it sleep properly?
Yeah, does it sleep properly? Does it
it crash if you plug in an external monitor?
Yeah.
Like, things that we've seen, right?
I need this piece of software and now I'm stuffed. Whereas like, because Mac and Windows are the dominant forces, I mean, you've got Office on Mac now, it's not great, but you can, even things like Chrome just runs better on the other two than it has on Linux when I've used it on Linux. And it's kind of like you spend a lot of time in that. Although Chrome does run like a bit of a dog on a Mac as well. But
it does seem, actually, Chrome does seem best on Windows. I don't know why that is. I guess they must be using that in Google a lot.
I don't think they do.
They use a Linux build.
I think they use a Linux.
How is it worse on that?
I don't know.
Weird.
You would.
But you'd think that the same about why they haven't released new Macs in so long. Because surely everybody in Apple is using Mac.
Yeah. They're probably all using like... Yeah, I don't know.
Or they let them run homebrew type. They're just bringing in like their own PCs.
I see what you mean. They're just installing Mac on like. They're like, I just went and got a really nice Dell, and then I've installed a Mac OS on it. But like, I don't know what the hell they're doing because what they're probably doing is they're using the first thing is money is no object to them because they make the bloody things.
Yeah, so there's no cost for them.
So they're like, I've got a 7K laptop or whatever.
But for them, it's just at cost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just at cost. So it's like like £300 or whatever ridiculous, like £2,000. But maybe they're also all using desktops. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But like seriously, the Mac, until this release, I mean, presumably now they've given all their engineers that have laptops the 32 gig. 16 gig of RAM till this release, so like first half of 2018, is BS in my book. Like, that is crazy, and like the number of times I genuinely bumped into it. But I think you could get away with 8 gig if you're just doing like web dev.
Yeah,
8 gig. We had someone in my company 8 gig. She never complained. I mean, maybe she was having a terrible time. I don't know. But
she might not have known any different.
She never had a better
developer,
one.
Yeah,
but she seemed okay. So you would get the top of the line Dell Latitude. You wouldn't get a Dell something else?
No, I think the Dell was an option. Is always a serious contender. I think for a lot of people it wouldn't be. I do like the Surfaces. The Surface Book 2, I think, has got to be up there. And there is a Surface dock. I don't know if it works with that one, but there is a dock for Surface.
Docking is a good. I
think docking is important.
Yeah, it is. The Mac docking is not particularly important from what I've seen. Like USB-C, like I want one cable, 2 4K monitors, and everything else done. And from what I've seen, you need like a £250 dongle to make that happen, which is not ideal.
The Dell dongles aren't cheap, but they're more like £100 off eBay rather than.
That's fine.
You can get official Dell ones, sort of.
You could think about buying 2.
Yeah,
but like
which I did actually
with 250 quid.
Yeah,
like our friend has one, and he told me, like, I went to his office and he is using that but then using a dedicated cable for the other 4K monitor, because in practice it's not really working well enough. And
So he's got two things.
So he actually still has two things.
Oh,
and
man.
so the dream is not yet. Maybe it's a technology thing. Like in a couple of years, a dongle, will be like £100 and it won't be.
I mean, that's the nice thing about Dell. I guess they've done that for a long time, so that's one of the few things they've actually got as a business advantage.
Yeah.
Which is weird to think about it when you think about PCs. They're more or less all the same.
Yeah.
But there is that, which I think...
That you've been propping them up.
Yeah, me, and that's just me.
Just buying them.
With this Dell monitor and this Dell monitor stand.
It's not a Dell mouse, is it?
No, it's a Logitech. Yeah, is there anything else you want to say on the PC versus Mac, apart from a little bit of a moan about Mac prices, which I think is completely understandable?
Yeah, I'm probably going to... I think our one listener might give me quite a lot of hate, potentially, if they like Macs.
Well, you're always going to get people who are massive fans.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, they're trying to... But I think what they're doing with Macs is what they're doing with their phones is that they're pricing them to be exclusive. But they need to be... people who are like developers, the price is a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's not about status for a Mac developer necessarily.
No.
Whereas for a phone, you could argue, yeah.
There is some status there, I think. Like,
But for a lot of people, if you're using Xcode, there's no option. And there's no developer program that you can get a discounted Mac to use Xcode, right? Yeah. So they're saying, we raise the price by X amount. You do code in Xcode, well, you're gonna have to stump up some more cash for us to then develop for our App Store.
I do despair. I think it's mainly just because they've put the word pro in, and then you kind of feel like when you look at the comparable PC option for the laptop, you can get so much more. Like you were saying, dropping 2K on a, we're talking about most of these Macs are probably in that bracket as well, but you'll probably get double the memory. Maybe more, better processor. You'll get better everything. The trackpad and the build quality aside, you'll probably get better everything else.
Yeah,
and like you can probably buy like 4 dongles. Yeah, like all the Diet Coke you can drink, and you can.
That's all it is, really.
You'll still have more. You still have a better computer. But
yeah. There we go. We've been talking for nearly 2 hours.
Time to stop.
All right.
Goodbye.